Hey, it's Robonzo here. As a gigging musician and fan of live music, I love sharing my personal experience and the things I'm learning from other music artists and professionals. You can be privy to those learnings by joining the Unstarving musician community. In the process, you will be supporting me and this podcast. Just go to unstarvingmusician.com to join. You'll get an email from me, usually every 7 to 10 days, with tips, insights, secrets, all intended to help make your music journey a little better and brighter. All right, let's do this. This is the Unstarving Musicians Podcast. The podcast features conversations with musicians and music industry professionals, all intended to help musicians be better at marketing, business, the creative process, and all the other things that empower us to do more of what we love. Make music. Greetings, chickadees and chickadoos. My guest in this episode is the electrifying and soulful Lisa Sanders. She was introduced to me by Amy Killingsworth of Amy and Gary's house concerts. Lisa played the very second show ever at Amy and Gary's house concerts. Lisa turned me on to a concept known as the Instagramma, or in my case, the Instagrampa. Now, I've been on Instagram for a while, but when we joke about not being kids, she told me that her team members, some of the younger ones, call her an Instagramma, so, maybe that's me. You can judge when you hear our conversation. We also geek out a little bit on coffee, and we talk about the remarkable little scene of Java Joe's in San Diego, where Lisa and many others kind of got their start. We also chat at length about Lisa's journey from an indie label to a true indie artist, and all the decisions that she's had to make considering the forward motion desire that she had for her career. We chat a little bit about work that she and her friends are doing for the homeless and at-risk youths. And in this episode, you get to hear a track from one of her latest albums. That track is called Secret Angel. She let me choose it, and I chose it because it's got a little percussion. It's got some layered vocals on it by Brown Sugar, I presume. You'll also, if you check out the related blog post, you'll see a video for another track from the album called Epic. It's a pretty special video. Learn more about Lisa at lisasanders.com. All right, here is my conversation with Lisa Sanders. Lisa, welcome to the show.
Hey, hi, Roberto. Good to be here.
Yes, good to be here indeed. I was thinking before we connected here that I wanted to mention to those who are listening that I saw this message that had been on Instagram from you to me about doing this because I had asked a mutual friend to connect the two of us, and it looked like you'd responded several days ago, if not a couple of weeks ago or more, and I was kind of embarrassed. And just to say that I love Instagram, obviously. I'm using it, and it's such a beautiful place. But boy, I realized today that the messaging and comments thing is, it gets a little buried.
Yeah. Well, it would have been good if I would have, sent you an email, like a regular, email would have been good. I have this habit of, if I get an inquiry or something, I like to handle whatever comes in as soon as possible, because then it piles up if I don't. So I answer these things or send things out, and then I may not get an answer back for a while, and that's where the follow-up comes in, But otherwise I handle it right away, because stuff will pile up for me, and it makes me crazy. So.
Yeah, no worries.
Yeah.
I know you and me, we're just trying to keep up with the kids, right? And stay on Instagram whenever we can.
Yeah. Yeah, they call us Instagrammas,
Oh, that's funny. I haven't heard that.
Are you an Instagramma? Yeah, that's the girl. Yeah, my girl group. Yeah, we have the youngest one in our new musical endeavor is in her 20s, I believe, and so she calls us the Instagrammas, and she helps us out with trying to figure out how these things work.
That is really cute. What's the musical?
Well, we're doing a thing called the Luna Divas, and it's songs about the moon. It's outdoors under the concerts are for full moon. We have them on full moon day nights, and we get together and sing our own songs, original songs. We have a backup band, and headed by Jeff Berkeley, who's now a musical director for Jason Mraz. So that works out pretty good. He's been our producer for years. But anyway, let's see. We do songs like Moon Shadow by Cat Stevens, anything that has the moon in it.
Very nice.
It's really a lot of fun. Really a lot of fun.
That is cool.
They're all award winners.
Did you say it's already in production, so to speak, or are you in the kind of getting ready mode?
Yeah, it's in production. Well, actually, our first big show is this Sunday. Here in San Diego. Yeah. Outdoors at the Heritage Ranch, and we have VIP section, and there's general admission, and chuck wagon, and a wine bar, by Delavine. Della Wines. They're gonna have different array of different things that you can pick, and we have a beer guy, and a food cart or food chuck wagon. It's gonna be fun. I think I said that already, but I'm waiting for coffee.
Well, that'll just
must have coffee.
Yes, that'll just make it all the more fun, the beer and wine. And we were talking about coffee before I pressed record, and I wanted to nerd out with you for a minute. You said you were going to grind some coffee beans and asked me to give you a moment if it was all right. And of course, loving coffee as I do, I thought it would be just fine for you to do that. Do you French press, or do you have like a fancy machine, or?
Oh, no, I French press. How did you know? That's pretty cool. No, I just French press. For me, it makes the best cup of coffee ever. I have a coffee machine, but it's okay when you're having like a ton of people over and you need to keep making coffee. But other than that, I think they're pretty much useless.
I agree.
Making a good cup of coffee.
I actually bought 2 new presses recently because I'm in an area where it's just, there's not a Starbucks on every corner. And I broke my carafe the other day, and my wife wisely told me, just buy 2 because when people come over, we can make, more coffee at once. And anyway, I have a backup.
Oh, that's smart. Oh, that's great. I have a backup too. Man, great minds. Because you break you got to have it, extra.
I know. I ask because I'm a total coffee lover, and I have to tell you something funny you'll maybe get a kick out of is that I have a French friend who lives in, let me see if I can remember the city, and it'll come to me, Marseille? I'm sure I pronounced it incorrectly. Yeah. And so, he was born there, lives there, speaks the language, and English a second language, but I talk with him every couple of weeks for some time now because we're in a little mastermind group. And one day we were on Skype and actually doing the camera thing, and I was making coffee and said, hey, I was kind of curious what his reaction would be. I'm like, do you guys call this a French press? Or I said something about my French press, and he said, you're what? And so I'm showing him the press, and he laughed, and he goes, you know what we call that here? And I'm like, what? And he said, an Italian press. And,
oh, wow.
Well, then I have an Italian friend here in Panama, and I mentioned this conversation to him because it amused me so much. And he said, we don't, he said, that's not Italian. So I have no idea where it comes from now.
Oh my gosh. I know. That's funny. I'll have to check that out. Now my head's going. That'd be fun.
All right, enough about coffee. I guess I could go further. I noticed. Well, by the way, you and I were connected by Amy Killingsworth of Amy and Gary's house concerts. I had a wonderful conversation with her and some kind of follow up on the topic of house concerts, and have more in store coming because I'm so fascinated with them and would like to do my own here, bringing some of you nice folks that I talked to on the podcast to come perform. But how long have you known Amy? And I bet you she and I kind of went over this, but when did you first meet? And how was your last gig there at Amy and Gary's house concerts in San Antonio, Texas?
San Antonio, Texas. Yeah, it was fabulous. It's one of my, I could say, top 5 concerts that I've ever played. And I've been playing for a long time, a couple decades even. So it was really amazing. It was a great packed house. I met Amy and Gary in San Diego when they were on vacation about 2 years ago. They saw in the paper where to go or online or something. Java Joe's, that's where oh no, here's how it happened. I'm so sorry. They were watching the audience show on, on television. And it's the musical program that features these artists and it interviews them and shows them in concert. And then they cut and have conversation like we're doing right now with the band. And Jason was saying how he got his start at Java Joe's in San Diego, which happens to be where all of us got our start, including Jewel. Oh, wow. So, so and I don't know if everybody knows Steve Poltz, but he wrote You Were Meant for Me for Jules, but now he's, getting pretty big. And we have another kid coming out of here that's blowing up the charts right now that we're really proud of. But anyway, so they saw that on television. And so when they got here, they looked up, where's Java Joe's? We want to go see shows there. Well, Java Joe's, for the last 27 years, he's been open. We've all been coming together if we're in town, including Jason, and we do one shots where, I guess everybody would know how this goes if you're a musician. You just put your name on the list or whatever, and you get your number, and you go on one after another and do a song or 2 songs, and maybe if there's not that many, you do 3. Well, Amy and Gary happened to show up there on their vacation, and they saw the Lovebirds, which is Veronica May and Lindsay White. But they broke up now, and now Veronica's doing big things, and Lindsay's out touring. But they invited Lindsay. They heard Lindsay talk about house concerts, and they said, "What is that?" So Lindsay explained it to them. And they decided to host Lindsay in San Antonio while she was on tour. She does a lot of touring. And so they hosted Lindsay and Veronica for that very first show. And the second show, they had met me because I said, after I got off stage, I said to Amy, "Oh, I love your shirt." She had this cool shirt on. And so I guess we bonded over her shirt enough for her to want to reach out and see if me and Brown Sugar would come to San Antonio. And so we did the second show. And one thing about Amy and Gary, if you had known, you would think they'd been doing that forever. She's very organized, having been an executive secretary. She just knows how to get everybody in, and you have a lovely time. And she just runs it so well, the both of them. It always amazes me how good they are at it. And you don't have to be great at having house concerts. You just have to be able to open your home up and be able to, host an act coming through and people enjoying it, and you have a potluck, and but it's good to have a little system so that it's a little organized for you.
Yeah, and
we could talk about that later, I guess.
No, we can talk about it anytime. We can talk about it now. With Amy, we had such a great conversation and had a little follow-up, and I never gathered from her that she was an executive admin, and suddenly it becomes clear to me why she's so organized. And then I know that not only from her work doing that did it help, but she just has a love for entertaining. And so she's got all the wares for doing so from what she tells me, so that she goes all out, it sounds like.
Oh, yeah, you should see her garage. She has a whole part of her garage dedicated to entertaining. So there'll be glassware and stuff like that. But, you don't have to do that. I've done house concerts all the way to Canada and Montreal, and did a house concert in DC in the attic of a house, a little tiny attic. That was interesting. And so, you don't really have to, but the big ones, because some of them are kind of prestigious, if you can get into some of these house concerts that they kind of set themselves up to have a really good experience. And so before everybody wants to play there, but they usually only have so many a year, and then they're picky about who they pick. And,
sure. Do you recall, I want to back you up a little bit to something you mentioned as we started talking about Java Joe's. And by the way, as soon as you mentioned Java Joe's, it all started coming back to me. And I'm like, oh yeah, why didn't I go look at my notes from my conversation with Amy? But you mentioned a kid, not by name, but you mentioned someone who's an up-and-comer that you're all very proud of. Who was that?
Oh, yeah. His name is, now I'm having a little, I'm mixing my coffee. It's, Lee Coulter.
Lee Coulter.
And he does a song. It's number one on iTunes in Australia and New Zealand. And that made him get a whole bunch of phone calls and opportunities. Lee Coulter. Yeah. Lee. He is awesome.
How did that happen? Was that kind of weird that he got number one, that he became number one on iTunes in Australia and New Zealand? Or was there a reason for that?
Yes. He has a sister who, get this, does a podcast.
Nice.
Out of Australia. That's where he's from, but he lives here in San Diego for the last, I think 15 years. He's now a U.S. citizen. Also, he just became a naturalized citizen. But his sister put it in some kind of video. This music, you and me, and I. I'll look it up for you and give you the name.
Do you recall what her podcast is about? Is it a music thing?
No, I think it's about family and everyday life kind of thing.
Wow.
And what she did was she took his song and put it on a tribute to her husband for anniversary, and it took off, and people loved it. And then I guess it was uploaded on iTunes, and she told everybody where they could get it. And the next thing you know, everybody's sharing it, everybody's downloading it, and it became number one. It went up. It was in the top. It made it on the chart, and then Lee would give us Facebook updates and let us know, how it was climbing. And now it's number one.
That's so amazing.
And it knocked off Drake off the chart.
Wow.
It knocked off a bunch of people that are big.
That is amazing.
So it's making the news. And so he's doing that, the thing where you get that wonderful opportunity. And the cool thing about Lee is he writes this beautiful, positive, uplifting, kind of fun music. It may have a deep meaning, and it's usually the core of it is just love. And this guy is so good. I saw him years ago, and I go, he's going to be a big star. And it's coming true. It's the same way when I met Jason Mraz, he hadn't even sang, and I knew. But Jewel, same thing. Yeah, wow. He's got that thing, and the cool thing too is his wife is a wonderful videographer, so she makes all of his music videos, and they're really cool. So he's kind of set up already, and that comes to preparation for, he's prepared, and it happened, and that's really cool.
That's cool. I'm gonna have to go track down that podcast episode too, because it's kind of an interesting story to me that it panned out, that it's unfolding the way it is. So I'll have to find out.
You should have him on your show.
I may. Well, I'll confess that I asked the name because I wanted to go see and listen and see if it was someone that I might want to try to get on the show.
Absolutely.
So, thank you for sharing.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'll get you his info.
No, that would be fantastic.
So you can call him.
Okay, you mentioned a couple other things here that I want to touch on. Tell me about. I know you two have known each other for a long time, but tell me about Brown Sugar, aka Karen Hayes, and a little bit about the band, if you could.
Oh, sure. We're a duo, but we also have a band. And Brown Sugar I met in high school. I tell everybody she was my sister's best friend, and I stole her. and we've been singing together, probably almost 17 years now, since right after the Hold On Tightly CD came out. I have like 9 CD releases, and the Hold On Tightly came out, and right after that, I turned to her and I said, you should sing with me, because what would happen is she was my best friend, right? Mm-hmm. And what would happen was I would be writing these songs and nobody else would hear them before her. And she would have these harmonies she'd be finding for me and singing them while I'm practicing or writing, and she would just know where the harmonies were intuitively, and she would just do it. And so I just turned to her and just said, why don't you just, be in the band? And that was it. I don't tell her what to do. I don't, she just knows instinctively. And over the years we've grown, and of course have gotten more, adapt to her job even better. She's truly a professional, and I'm so proud of her. And she has a big heart, and she's funny. People love hearing what she's going to say because she doesn't talk much, but when she says something, it's straight to the point, and she gives me these looks on stage like, what are you doing? And people just fall out, because she's just not having it. I could be acting up or doing something, and she'll just go, I don't know you.
She kind of has that look about her, too. I've only seen pictures, and I think I've possibly seen some videos of the two of you performing back when around the time I spoke with Amy Killingsworth. It's funny, as you mentioned her sense of humor, and while you were telling me about her, I suddenly wanted to ask if you knew Ray Prim and his sidekick that who goes by Mexican Chocolate.
Oh, that's funny. That's so funny. I've only spoken to Ray Prim. We text each other back and forth, a mutual admiration, but I've never seen him play live. But I really like him, and I love his music. Amy and Gary have this beautiful way of sharing everyone that they really like. And they gave me a Ray Prim, in fact, 2 Ray Prim CDs and a Tom Meany. I love Tom Meany. He's there in Texas, out of Austin.
Yeah, he's been on the podcast. He's a great guy.
Yeah, he is. I did get to, we did Amy and Gary's renewal nuptials together. We sang, me and Tom Meany, for that big, beautiful event they had for that, celebrating them. But Ray Prim and Tom Meany, I listen to while I tour. So I put them in my CD player, or now when we rent cars, we put everything on a flash drive and go across America listening. So it was really cool to finally talk to him. But I'd love to meet Mexican Chocolate. That'd be funny.
I see, like, just I don't know, it has to happen that you and Brown Sugar and Ray Prim and Mexican Chocolate have to be on the same bill together somewhere at some point.
Yeah, I know.
And Ray, the other thing I was kind of tickled about is Ray is also very funny, and you're talking about how Brown Sugar's a cut up, and I was like, it could just be an epic evening, I'm sure.
Oh, I'm sure. We're all ridiculous. You know, we have silly shows. We get people singing stuff, and I tell a lot of stories, and I can't help it. And if I don't tell them, Brown Sugar goes, "You got to tell them the story." So, you know, I get it. We love that. We love, you know, entertaining and having people enjoy themselves. That's why we do what we do.
Always nice to make people laugh if you can, if you got the gift for it.
Yeah.
Tell me about growing up. I gathered, I'll see if I remember right, that it starts in Philadelphia, but it looks like you went abroad and kind of moved around a little bit. Can you tell me a little bit about growing up and how music kind of came in the picture?
Oh, sure. I was born in Philadelphia, and I had a brother. He's passed on now, and it was just the two of us and my mom. And my mom went and got my brother a guitar, but the thing about that is that the build up to that was we always had music in the house, and I remember the day we got our what they called a hi-fi in those days, and some 45s delivered, and it was all the Motown, and we used to watch Ed Sullivan. You know, so I'm a product of the 60s. I was a little girl in the 60s, but I remember them, you know, so well. The music was really awesome. And we even saw the Beatles. I remember the first time the Beatles came to America on Ed Sullivan, and I was sitting there watching that with my brother. So we loved music, and he begged my mom for a guitar, and she went and got it for him for Christmas. It was a Fender, and a pretty cool electric guitar right now. It'd probably be worth quite a bit of money. And so he started playing. He had a little band. He was only 10, and I was 7 or 6. And I'd sit on the couch in my bathrobe, and there's a bunch of little, like, elementary school kids who got instruments for Christmas in our living room playing. And, yeah, that's how I got my start. And my first instrument was a tambourine. If you remember the Archies, Veronica had a tambourine, and that's what I wanted.
Nice.
So I got an Archie tambourine with, you know, Veronica on it and the whole Archie band, and I was happy. So that was my contribution. And, you know, we moved from there. Mom met my second dad, Roy, because my mom married 2 Roys.
My dad was Roy.
Oh, wow. We have so much in common. That's funny.
So far.
Yeah. Oh, that's funny. So he was in the military. He was a CB, a builder in the Navy. And so we moved to the island in Newfoundland. I call it Newfoundland, but some people call it Newfoundland, Canada, but I call it Newfoundland. So I think they do too. And we lived there for a little while, almost 2 years, I guess, and then back to the States where we moved to California. And all the time, me and my brother were really completely immersed in music. I mean, if music was on, it to this day, it stops me. I'll be in a restaurant and hear a tune I really like, or the grocery store or something, and I'll go, wow, that's so-and-so, you know. It's really, really touched me my whole life wherever we went.
Yeah.
The music went with us, you know.
By the way, the tambourine is very important, and not many people can play it, right? So,
yeah, that's true.
I'm glad.
Brown Sugar has one now.
I'm glad. Yeah. I bet you either one of you can do a darn good job with it.
Yeah, we're okay.
So have you been in Southern California since?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I've been here most of my life now. I got here, let's see, we moved to the LA area, Port Hueneme. I lived on a military base because I was a military brat. And we lived there. Let's see, we've been here, oh my gosh, I got here at 10. I was 10 years old, I think, when we moved to California. So that's a long time. A really long time. That's most of my life. So I've been in San Diego for, oh gosh, over 40 years.
Wow, San Diego's a lovely place.
Yeah.
Now I know someone else I need to look up when I'm there, and maybe you'll actually be there next time I'm there. It looks like you were.
Oh, yeah, that would be great. I'd show you around.
Yeah, that reminds me of something else I wanted to mention or ask you about. I was looking at your current tour schedule and some past gigs, and you're all over the place in terms of the traveling. How do you manage that, and has that kind of been the way it's been for a long time now that you play all over the country and elsewhere?
Yes, it has been. See, when I got signed to a record label, I was in my 30s, and I already had 2 daughters. I had 2 small daughters, and I was a single mom. And I realized that if I was going to make this work, because mind you, I wasn't going to be, my intention was not to be the singer. My intention used to be, when I got started, just to be the songwriter for the stars. But I got chased down and talked into signing a record contract and being the artist, the one who's singing it. And so I figured if that was going to be the case, if I was going to make this work, I was going to have to do smaller trips, but everything I did had to have meaning and had to be in something that could be footsteps for my career, because I had, 2 small daughters to raise, and they were my priority. But my music was also a priority because I had to. If I decided I was going to do this, I can't do anything halfway. I have to go all the way. I have to be in it, and I have to make it count. And for me, failure was not an option. I had too much at stake. I gave up my job to do this and to support them and to make sure they got, what they needed. They both are college grads, and one of them is a big-time engineer. They fly her all over the world. And the smaller one is, she's not small, but the younger one, Corinne, is doing really well as well. And she's back in college, but that was important to me, to be able to tour, to make sure that everything that I did was going to be worth my time, and also build on my skill set and things I would need to move forward in my career. So that's why, if you look, I'm all over the place.
When you mentioned that everything had to be footsteps for your career, I get that, and it makes perfect sense. Can you talk a little bit about what criteria you've had for ensuring that things were worth your time, or have been, or are worth your time, and how that has maybe evolved over time?
Sure, definitely. I believe that everything starts with me. And I had to grow in this business over time. I had to grow as a human being. And that being said, each step was, some was trial, some was, oh gosh, I don't know if I should have did that, but in hindsight, it all worked out. And the criteria was, will it give me a platform where more people can see me and hear my music? Because as an artist, and especially more and more as we're independent artists, because everybody knows the music business really changed, it's important to have exposure. In the old days, you would sign a contract and they would put you on the tour if they could afford it, and you get television appearances and things like that. But I didn't get any of that because my first label was an independent label. So I come from an independent frame of mind. So that being said, my choices would be, is it something that if I do this show, will it get me more exposure? So that was, because what's the point if nobody ever hears and sees you? How are you going to get your music out? So those were criteria. So a lot of the times I was blessed, and I'm still blessed. It amazes me how many great stars I get to be with and open for, and, sometimes be called out on stage to sing with them. And it's really amazing to have that opportunity. But two, the second thing is to know when an opportunity is a good one or not. My barometer is sometimes I got to play a dive bar because you don't know who is going to be there. You don't ever know what circumstances will transpire of you taking that gig that you think you might have hated doing. And sometimes it wasn't, like the greatest gig, but you met cool people. So is that going to be something that that's where instinct comes in? I don't know I hope I'm making sense here. I hope I'm not, so if you want to be seen, sometimes you have to make choices that are, that seem like maybe not really the greatest thing, but you choose them because you know that it will be a building block. Say, you'll get experience playing in front of an audience who could give a crap, smoking cigarettes or whatever they're doing, playing pool or whatever. I got signed at a record deal because I did a gig like that. It needed chicken wire. And but the ability to discern whether that gig is going to be good for you is the number one thing. So intuition, your gut plays a major role in that choice. It all starts with you. And I ask myself these questions. So will it propel? Yeah.
What's the conversation that you have with yourself when it turns out that it was, one of those gigs or whatever, as you mentioned earlier, that, maybe that wasn't so good. Maybe I shouldn't have done that. How do you sort of walk yourself through that over the years?
Well, here's the cool thing about that. Here's what I think. I say to myself, okay, I did that gig. What did I get out of it? Number one, I got practice. There's no substitute for playing as many gigs as you can and getting as much experience as you can. It is priceless. So I have to say that playing a dive bar is never a mistake, but it may not feel good. At this point in my life, I ask myself, will this gig make me feel good so that I can give the best show? Is it a place where people, will want to come and see me? If that answer is no, I don't go back. Because if I can't build a fan base there, then there's no point. I got a great experience, so I walk myself through these things. Is that a viable place where I could get new fans? Now, if I'm a rockabilly, band and I play a dive bar and people love me there and it starts to get packed every time, then that's a great gig for me to play. right?
Mm-hmm.
So I have to know my crowd, know what they might like, know if that experience would be a good experience for my fan base. So those are the questions I ask. And 2, is the person running it, crabby pants, which happens a lot, but I don't mind, I don't mind crabby pants. People run the venues. Sometimes they're kind of cranky.
Yeah.
And you kind of have to deal with that. Can you put up with that? So, and will your fans be able to put up with that? That's the number one question.
Sure. And for those listening, and I've played with a few of you who are like this, that whenever you run into a crabby pants, as Lisa puts it, is just don't take it personal. It's not about you. Try and roll with it and have some fun with it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They kind of make me chuckle, actually. I kind of like them. At least you know where they're coming from.
Yeah, and some people get along great with those people. Sometimes I can get taken aback, but it's always a challenge to try and I don't know. I guess anything from getting them in a better mood to just sort of acknowledging that you're having them acknowledged and to some degree that you're on their side and you're there to work with them. So
yeah, it's pretty. I like those guys, but I grew up like I said, in the military, married a military guy, so I get used to the gruff. You just kind of go, oh, that's cool. You need a hug today? They go, no, I don't need a hug.
I don't,
but at least you cared,
that's probably, I'm sure that's
care.
I'm sure that's a great way to acquire that skill, being in a military family, military marriage and all that. I grew up far from that, but I worked, when I was younger, some customer service gigs, and sometimes you have to deal with some pretty pissed off people, and it gives you a lot of practice at getting people in a better mood. So, something else that we talked about very briefly before we pushed record, and you maybe alluded to since we've been recording, is that you recently got all the rights back from your record label, and you kind of also you threw in there, since we've been recording, that the changing music business, the fact that your label was an indie label, which got you in an independent artist mindset. Can you talk? Well, and the reason for anyone who's curious why I asked is I love featuring tracks of artists on these episodes. Something I've learned as I've gone along, and something else I've learned is trying to navigate the waters of doing so in a legal manner. And so anyway, we were talking about the rights to your music. Can you talk a little bit about how that has kind of happened?
Sure. I got signed in, I believe it was like 97. My first CD came out on Cargo Records, imprint label called Earth Music, and Cargo had 4 or 5 different offices: Chicago, Europe, Canada, one here in San Diego, which they got they signed Blink 182, if you guys remember them. I was on a label with Blink.
Nice.
So so they signed me, and I went through all that, but recently they decided to release their whole catalog back to everyone. All the artists can get most of their rights. There's some of the Blink 182 stuff they're not releasing because, frankly, it's probably worth a whole lot. So they're not really releasing that. But they called me up and said I could come and get my stuff. And it happened to be right after the 20-year anniversary of my first release. And I had invited them. Eric Goodis and Sharon Goodis were the owners, and they had closed up shop. So they're no longer a record label. So that made it great because they didn't want all this stuff. They had it in a like a shed, that one of those, she shed kind of things that you can move all your stuff into. And they had most of our stuff in there and in their garage at their home. So I went over and got it, and sent me an email saying that they signed off on it and all. Nothing really formal yet. So that was a blessing. So I own right now all my whole catalog except for the TV and movie stuff that was released 2 years ago. But the thing about it is I find it doesn't hurt to ask. And if you go to your record label and you say, I want off, 9 times out of 10, they'll just say, sure. And that's the cool thing about it, because I asked to get off my label because they weren't able to really get me where I needed to go. And they said, absolutely. They didn't give me didn't release my music back to me at that time. It took me, it's been a good 15 years since. But I did happen to get them back. But I find it doesn't hurt to ask. If you want off and you want your rights back, ask. But I learned a valuable lesson in my contract when I signed with them, Cargo Music, with Eric and Sharon. The most important thing is to make sure that your rights are not, their rights to your music is not in perpetuate, is not, perpetual. Make sure that you can, that your rights get released back to you in a timely manner. And that's something that you can negotiate. So I would negotiate to the tooth and nail from the very beginning to have that happen, so that you have a set date if you decide to sign with somebody, that you can get your rights released back to you, because that's really important. That was something I fought for back in the 90s, and they just didn't want to give it to me. And I finally just, gave in after 3 months of going back and forth and lawyers' fees it was costing me and the whole bit. So I'll never do that again.
But I take it that in some cases it works out where artists are able to successfully negotiate that?
Absolutely.
That's good.
You have to. You have to do it. I mean, I remember, I don't know if you guys know anything about Ray Charles. I'm going to assume you do. Mm-hmm. But Ray Charles was the first one in the history of the music business to own all of his rights to his music. That was his contention. That was his, premise for signing a deal at all. And he was the first one to show us that you can do it.
I didn't know that about him.
Yeah. So I think it doesn't hurt. It never hurts to, throw your hat in the ring and say, this is what I want. And if you can decide whether you want to, take terms that are presented to you or not. And that's the cool thing about going through the process of signing a deal. You don't have to sign away your rights if you don't want to. It's completely up to you. But what I did get, and I'm proud of, is that I got complete creative license in my contract. So I could, if I didn't like something that the producer wanted to put on my record, I absolutely didn't have to have it on there because I said so. And that was really great because it kept the integrity of my music intact. And choosing the right producer was really cool, but he chose me, chased me down. That's how I got the record deal, because that dude just was relentless. He'd show up in places and I'm like, what are you doing here? And the record label did the same thing. They started showing up at all my shows, and I finally had to ask them, what do you want? And they finally signed me in. It took them a while to get me, but I gave in, and 9 CDs later, here I am.
Well, it sounds like there were some really good things about it, and certainly some good learning experiences.
Oh, it was the best thing I ever could have did. I can't imagine my life I'm so blessed, every day. I'm so blessed. And yeah, I get grumbly because I want, there's always more that I want to reach for. And learning that balance between reaching for something and letting the universe do its work has been a challenge, but it's working. It's a growing thing. It all starts with me and my mindset and my work ethic and the way I talk and speak to people, and it all counts. I don't want to be a jerk. You don't know who you might be talking to. Recently we sat with Steve Wozniak, who invented the Apple computer, came to our show, him and his wife, Janet. And you would never know. I didn't know what he looked like. I didn't know it was him. He's wearing a pair of shorts and a T-shirt, and he comes backstage and he sits with us and eats with us and talks and everything. And you would never know that this guy, changed the course of life as we know it, kind of. Yeah. Between Apple and Bill Gates, they changed our whole everything. Yeah. And he's sitting there having this lovely conversation with us, and he loved our music, and so it pays not to be a jerk, because you just don't know. And so I don't know, you just kind of have to go with the flow and make plans and try to reach your goals and do it with a heart.
Yeah. I usually reserve being a jerk for the people I love the most, so that way I don't get in trouble with the Steve Wozniaks of the world.
Yeah. I don't think you could be a jerk even if you tried.
I don't know. I'm pretty good at it when unintentionally.
Oh, no, you're a sweet guy. I hope I'm not going all over the planet. I get to talking, and boy, I just get going, so.
That's okay. I did want to ask you before we wrap up about, I don't know if in and of itself it is the entire of a documentary or if it's a documentary short, but you have a little project called Signs of Humanity on your website, which is really cool.
Oh, yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about it?
Yes, sure. My music is featured in Signs of Humanity, and Willie Baronet, who is he's a professor at the University of Texas in Dallas. And he's a professor there, and he was afraid of homeless people. They look scary, and he thought, hey, I guess he's an arts professor, by the way, and he teaches that in social media. So what he did was he decided to go out and collect their signs, pay for them. So he'd walk up to them and give them $10 for their sign. And their signs that he collected started to, he started to amass quite a collection. And so him and a filmmaker, a filmmaker from New York University, decided that they were going to make a documentary, and they were going to start in San Diego. And they were on a TV show, on a morning news show, talking about it. And my friend Donna Larson saw it, and she called me, and she says, Lisa, we got to help this guy. We've got to help him out any way we can. Let's have a show, and we'll do a fundraiser. So we put it together in a couple days, and all of us folk singers came down and did it, and he came through with his film crew and filmed me, and was blown away by the song Angels that I sing, and asked me on the spot if he could put that in his documentary, which is about, I don't even know. I think it's about a half hour or an hour. It's beautiful if you can see it. Signs of Humanity. You can see the link. And since then, it has a life of its own. Now it's in Russia. It's playing in Russia. We flew out to New York City for the New York premiere at the New York Film Festival, which was amazing. And then we did the Dallas Film Festival for it. Got chased by a storm out of Dallas, so we had to head out. It's been a wonderful experience. Great people, really great people who put it together. Tim Chumley is the producer, and let's see, they're all out of Texas, I believe. Oh no, Tim lives in Louisiana, I think. No, Tim, I think lives in Texas. I'm not sure, but they all pretty much live in Texas.
It looks like a beautiful project. I just saw the bit that's on your site, and I'll be sure to put it in the show notes. But if you check out...
Eamon's the director.
Ah, okay.
He's out of New York and Connecticut.
Okay.
Yeah.
But if you happen to check it out on Lisa's website, which is lisasanders.com, on her homepage, kind of down a little ways, you'll see this great little video for the documentary, and I will be sure to check it out. It looks pretty moving.
Yeah, it's amazing. And he filmed it all across the country, and then he does art installations of the signs in different places all over, America when they ask him to come. And he's been helping children have an awareness, and it's creating conversation on how can we create more housing for the homeless. So it's turned into a really cool tool for discussion. And by the way, really quick, I have a friend here who started a Voices for the City choir, Steph Johnson here, and that made it into NPR. They did a whole big documentary on her, and it's up for Emmy.
How nice.
And so I just want to give Steph a plug.
Nice. I will check that out. What's Steph's last name again? Mm-hmm. Johnson? Okay.
Yeah.
Very cool.
And she's an incredible jazz artist here out of San Diego. And she started a choir for the homeless, and it's taken off. And they have an office now. They got a giant grant, and they're really, really doing well.
Did I confuse two different projects? I was, referring to a video that's actually part of the Epic, but just above it, there's mention of Signs of Humanities. But those are two different projects, aren't they?
Oh, yeah. Definitely two different projects. The Epic video, which is on my website, I'm really proud of that. My friend Dustin Begovich, I've known him his whole life because me and his mom have been friends since we were 12. And he came to me and asked if he could do a music video of one of my songs. And I said, sure, pick the one you want. And he picked the Epic, which happens to be probably my favorite song on my Shiver CD, which is out everywhere. And so Dustin picked the Epic, and he said, hey, why don't we turn this into an awareness for how many young people are homeless, which there's a few million. It's really sad, but there's young people on the street. You don't really see them because for safety reasons, they hide out and blend in. Mm-hmm. You only see pretty much the older ones, but think about it. They're there, and they need help. And so that song puts all of the statistics at that time in perspective along with the song. And we had a really good person. I didn't want to star in it at all, so we got another amazing artist to come in and do the video for us. Yeah.
Well, did those two projects come on? Were they close together? And I can see why I confused them, or at least in my own head. Because
yes, they were within like a year of each other.
Yeah,
and that just kind of happened like that. It's one of those happy. All these things just kind of fell in my lap, and that goes back to knowing where you should be. You get that gut feeling you should show up. It can't happen to you unless you do. And in turn, it's been able to help people. And we've had fundraisers on top of it. We've taken the Epic and we've turned it into a biannual event where we call it Angel Fest. And at each Angel Fest, we give money to young people's, situations. One year was for the homeless street angels, and they go out and give food and socks and things to teenage and young adults who are homeless on the streets. And we were able to raise not that much money, but about $2,500. And we thought, $2,500 is not a lot, drop in the pan, but it still was gratifying to be able to give them something. And each year we're building on that to try and give more. Last year it was for the Street of Dreams. And these are young ladies who are in their teens who give birth to babies and need a lot of help getting through school. And they're all at risk. They've all had pretty much horrible things happen to them. And we gave almost $3,000 for them. And so it's working. And so that sprung from just Dustin saying, hey, let's use this song for good, and that just feels so good to be able to do that.
Yeah, it looks like you're doing beautiful work. Well, Lisa, thank you so much for spending time with me. I know I have a few follow-up questions for you, so we'll stay in touch. And it has been a real delight and a pleasure to finally connect, and of course to have you on the podcast.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much. I probably should have had Brown Sugar sitting with me too, because she's funny. She's here.
Hey, maybe we'll get her back on another episode.
Yeah. Well, it's great. I can't wait to meet you, and love to all of you out there in podcast land.
Thanks. I'm sure there'll be a lot of love coming back. We'll talk to you soon.
You betcha. Bye.
Voice in my head, chasing what I think will save me, pushed to the edge, counting on my balance to hold me, down in the street, where the cruel teaches me, don't think it's so sad. Toward the light, when the darkness surrounds me, climbing my bed, where the angels dance in my head. Don't think it's so sad the way I feel, and don't you feel sorry. I'll find a way. Banging down my door, gets better every day. Even if I stumble along the way, and fear and doubt, counting on the angels to fly me out. Don't think it's so sad the way I feel, and don't you feel sorry. I'm better every day. What I'm finding
Hey, thanks again for listening. This episode was powered by the Unstarving Musician's Guide to Getting Paid Gigs. How to get booked and paid what you're worth over and over again. Available in paperback and for Kindle on Amazon. The ebook is now available on Apple Books, Kobo.com, and just about anywhere else that you might find ebooks. It's also available as a standalone podcast called the Unstarving Musician's Guide podcast. You can learn more about the book and companion podcast at unstarvingmusician.com/book. I'd love it if you picked up a copy, and I'd love it even more if you left a review on Amazon. With much gratitude, peace, love, and more cowbell.